Have you ever said yes when you meant no, just to keep the peace, or stayed silent when you should have spoken up, all to avoid conflict? Maybe you've poured endless energy into making others happy, only to realize you've forgotten how to make yourself happy. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. So many of us fall into what's often called the nice guy trap, a pattern where being kind turns into people-pleasing, where generosity becomes self-abandonment, and where our own needs quietly take a backseat to everyone else's. It's exhausting, and it doesn't actually win respect. It often leads to being overlooked, underappreciated, or even taken advantage of. But what if I told you there's an ancient philosophy, tested by time and hardship, that offers a way out? Not through selfishness or aggression, but through strength, clarity, and unshakable self-respect. That philosophy is Stoicism. It wasn't designed for comfort. It was forged in the fires of real struggle by leaders, thinkers, and everyday people who faced immense challenges with unwavering courage. And at its heart, Stoicism teaches us how to be good without being weak, how to be kind without being a pushover, and how to stand firmly in our values without apology. In this video, we're diving deep into 25 Stoic insights that dismantle the nice guy mind, set not to make you harsh or uncaring, but to help you reclaim your power, your voice, and your peace. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more fully who you are, grounded, purposeful, and free from the need for external approval. Each insight we explore will offer a practical shift in perspective, drawn directly from the wisdom of Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. So whether you're struggling in relationships, at work, or within yourself, this journey is designed to meet you where you are and guide you toward a stronger, more authentic way of living. Let's begin. The very first insight that can dismantle the nice guy mindset is one of the most fundamental Stoic principles, focusing only on what is within your control. The ancient Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, a simple but life-changing idea that divides all of existence into two categories: things we have power over and things we do not. Your opinions, your judgments, your desires, your actions, these are yours to command. The weather, traffic, other people's thoughts, their approval, even the outcomes of your best efforts, these are not. For someone stuck in the nice guy pattern, this is revolutionary. So much of that people-pleasing exhaustion comes from tirelessly trying to manage the unmanageable, desperately seeking everyone's approval, needing every interaction to go smoothly, and feeling responsible for other people's emotions. You pour immense energy into controlling external reactions, and when it inevitably fails, because it always will, you're left feeling resentful, inadequate, and utterly burned out. Think about a common scenario. You might spend days meticulously planning a dinner party, hoping to create a perfect evening where everyone is happy and impressed. That's your intention, something you control, but you cannot control a guest showing up late, another criticizing the menu, or a third being in a sour mood. The nice guy reflex is to see these events as personal failures. You might apologize profusely, scramble to fix the unfixable, and internalize the criticism, ending the night feeling like you let everyone down. The Stoic shift is to recognize that your responsibility ended with your preparation and your hospitality. The reactions and moods of your guests belong to them. Your power lies not in controlling their experience, but in choosing your response to it. You can remain calm, you can be gracious, and you can refuse to let their offhand comments dictate your self-worth. This is how you break the chain of external validation. Your value ceases to be something others grant you and becomes something you anchor within yourself. When you stop pleading for approval from the outside world, something you can't command, you start building a genuine, unshakable confidence from within. You can still be kind, you can still be generous, but your actions will come from a place of personal choice and virtue, not from a fearful need to be liked. You do the right thing because it is right, not because you expect a reward of praise or affection. This focus liberates you. It means you can walk into any situation knowing that no matter what happens, your character, your integrity, and your effort are yours to maintain. That is the foundation of true strength. This brings us to the second profound insight, which directly challenges the nice guy's deep-seated need for comfort. Embrace discomfort and hardship as the very training ground for your strength. While the reflex is to avoid conflict, smooth over disagreements, and seek the path of least resistance, Stoicism teaches us to run toward difficulty, not away from it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who spent decades leading a war-torn empire, constantly reminded himself in his private journal that the obstacle is the way. He didn't see hardship as a nuisance or a sign that he had failed. He saw it as an opportunity to practice virtue, to test his mettle, and to build the resilience that defines a true character. For the nice guy, conflict feels like a threat to his identity, the identity of being liked, agreeable, and easygoing. But by constantly avoiding what is difficult, he unintentionally trades his self-respect for a fleeting sense of safety. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A nice guy might dread having a tough conversation with a friend who consistently oversteps boundaries. The thought of it brings anxiety, sweaty palms, a racing heart, the fear of the other person getting angry or upset. So he says nothing. He swallows his frustration, allows the behavior to continue, and slowly builds a quiet reservoir of resentment. He has chosen momentary comfort over long-term peace and self-respect. The Stoic approach is to reframe that entire experience. That knot in your stomach isn't a signal to retreat, it's a signal that you are about to do something courageous. The discomfort is not your enemy, it is the gym for your integrity. Leaning into that difficult conversation is how you build the muscle of assertiveness. Each time you do it, you prove to yourself that you can handle the aftermath, that your worth isn't destroyed by someone else's reaction, and that your boundaries are more valuable than universal approval. This practice of voluntary discomfort, something the Stoics called voluntary hardship, was a core part of their training. It wasn't about seeking misery for its own sake, but about intentionally making yourself resilient to life's inevitable misfortunes. Seneca would purposely wear old clothes and sleep on a hard floor occasionally, not because he had to, but to remind himself that he could be content even without luxury. In the same way, you can train yourself by deliberately stepping into small, manageable challenges. Start by saying no to a small request that you would normally say yes to out of obligation. Initiate a conversation you've been putting off. Accept that someone might be temporarily displeased with you and sit with that feeling without rushing to fix it. Each small act is a rep in the weight room of your character, building the resilience that allows you to remain calm and principled when larger storms inevitably hit. By willingly facing what is difficult, you shift your identity from someone who needs to be shielded from life to someone who is capable of handling whatever life brings. Your self-respect is no longer conditional on everything being easy. It becomes rooted in the proven knowledge of your own capability and courage. Now let's explore the third insight, a powerful mental exercise that directly confronts the anxiety driving so much nice guy behavior, the practice of negative visualization, or what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum. This translates to the premeditation of evils, though it's less about expecting doom and more about preparing for reality. At its core, this technique involves intentionally and rationally imagining the worst-case scenarios you fear, not to wallow in pessimism, but to strip those fears of their emotional power and realize that you could handle them if they occurred. For the chronic people-pleaser, the driving force is often a deep-seated anxiety about what might happen if someone disapproves of them, rejects them, or becomes angry with them. This fear feels so overwhelming that it becomes easier to abandon your own needs, to say yes when you mean no, and to constantly monitor everyone else's mood, all in a desperate attempt to avoid that dreaded outcome. The Stoic practice systematically dismantles this anxiety by bringing it out of the shadows and into the light of reason. Seneca advised us to rehearse poverty, loss, and exile in our minds. Marcus Aurelius regularly reflected on the impermanence of all things, including his own life and reputation. They did this not to make themselves miserable, but to achieve a profound sense of gratitude for what they had in the present moment, and to build incredible resilience by realizing that even their deepest fears were survivable. When you truly internalize that you can endure someone's disapproval, that you can withstand a moment of social awkwardness, or that you can handle a no being met with disappointment, you remove the very fuel that feeds the nice guy syndrome. Your actions cease to be reactions to fear and become choices based on principle. Applying this mindset is a practical, step-by-step process. First, identify a specific situation where you feel that familiar pull to people please. Perhaps it's a request from a coworker to take on a project you don't have time for, or the urge to stay silent when a family member makes a comment that crosses a line. Second, close your eyes and vividly imagine the worst realistic outcome of you sticking to your boundaries. Don't imagine fantastical disasters. Focus on the plausible consequences you actually fear. Picture the person's face looking disappointed. Hear the tone of their voice if they seem frustrated. Sit with the feeling of that temporary social friction. Third, and this is the most crucial step, mentally walk yourself through how you would handle it. What would you do next? How would you maintain your composure? Would the world actually end? You'll almost always find that the reality of the situation is far more manageable than the terrifying, abstract monster your anxiety has created. Finally, reflect on what this exercise reveals. You are still here, you are still breathing. Your core self remains intact even in the face of this imagined disapproval. This realization is incredibly liberating. It means you can enter any interaction knowing that you have already faced the specter of rejection and found yourself strong enough to bear it. This doesn't make you cold or uncaring. It allows you to be genuinely kind because your kindness is no longer a transaction for approval but a freely given choice. You can finally prioritize what is right over what is merely comfortable, secure in the knowledge that you have the fortitude to handle whatever response may come. This brings us to a fourth and perhaps the most grounding Stoic insight, the call to live according to your own nature and your inherent virtue. The Stoics believed that the fundamental nature of human beings is rational and social. We are designed to use reason to seek truth and to contribute to the common good. This isn't about being a hermit or acting against your social instincts. It's about understanding that your highest purpose is to live with integrity, courage, justice, and wisdom. For the person stuck in the nice guy pattern, this is a complete reframe of what it means to be good. Being good isn't about being agreeable, it's about being principled. It's not about making everyone happy, it's about acting with honor even when it's uncomfortable. The nice guy constantly compromises his values to be liked, trading away bits of his integrity for a momentary sense of social safety. He says he's fine when he's not, agrees to things he disagrees with, and hides his true opinions, all in a frantic effort to maintain harmony. But in doing so, he betrays his own rational nature. He is acting against his own truth, and that internal conflict is the source of profound anxiety and emptiness. Think about it this way. When you tell a white lie to avoid a friend's disappointment, you might temporarily avoid conflict, but you've sacrificed the virtue of honesty. You've also subtly communicated that you don't trust your friend to handle the truth, or that you don't trust yourself to handle their reaction. When you stay silent in a meeting while a misguided plan moves forward, you sacrifice the virtue of courage for the illusion of cohesion. Each of these small compromises chips away at your self-respect because you know, on a deep level, that you are not being the person you are capable of being. You are living according to someone else's nature, bending to their expectations rather than your own. The Stoic shift is to make your inner virtue the highest currency, worth more than anyone's temporary approval. Your goal is not to be perceived as a good man, but to be one, and that is something only you can define and uphold. So how do you practically start aligning your actions with your core principles? The first step is identification. You must get crystal clear on what your core values actually are. What does integrity mean to you? What does courage look like in your daily life? Take a quiet moment to write down the 3 to 5 virtues you want to guide your decisions. Perhaps it's honesty, responsibility, fairness, courage, and compassion. Keep this list simple and personal. The next step is to use this list as a daily filter. Before you say yes to a request, pause and ask, does agreeing to this align with my virtue of responsibility, or am I just trying to be seen as helpful? Before you stay silent, ask, does my silence align with courage and honesty, or am I avoiding necessary conflict? This moment of pause is where you reclaim your power. It moves you from autopilot reactivity to conscious choice. Finally, understand that living by virtue is a practice, not a perfect state. You will not get it right every time. Some days, the old nice guy reflex will win. The key is to reflect each evening. Marcus Aurelius ended his days by asking himself, what evil did you cure today? What failing did you resist? You can adopt a simpler version. Look back on your interactions and ask, where did I act with courage today? Where did I compromise my honesty? There is no need for self-flagellation. This is merely data. It's how you train. Each conscious choice to tell a difficult truth, to uphold a boundary, or to voice a dissenting opinion is a rep in the gym of your character. Over time, this consistent alignment between your inner principles and your outer actions forges an unshakable self-trust. You begin to rely less on external validation because you are receiving a far more powerful validation from within. The quiet, steady respect that comes from knowing you are living as the person you are meant to be. The fifth insight asks a simple but piercing question that every recovering nice guy must confront. What is the most precious resource you possess? Is it your money? Your skills? The Stoics, and Seneca in particular, argued with immense clarity that it is your time and attention. In his famous essay, On the Shortness of Life, Seneca didn't mince words. He wrote that life is not short, we simply make it so by wasting it. We are not given a small life, but we make it small. We squander our days on things that do not matter, handing over our hours and our energy to people and pursuits that drain us rather than fill us. For the person entrenched in the nice guy mindset, this is a devastatingly accurate diagnosis. Your time and energy are your life's currency, and you have been spending it lavishly on trivial favors, toxic relationships, and the exhausting pursuit of managing other people's opinions. Every time you say yes to a request you resent, you are paying with a piece of your life for something you do not even value. This goes far beyond simple time management. It is a profound philosophical stance on the value of your own existence. When you constantly prioritize others' trivial demands over your own meaningful goals, you are implicitly stating that their convenience is more valuable than your purpose. You delay your own projects to help someone with theirs. You sacrifice an evening of rest or reading to attend a social gathering you dread, all to avoid the perceived offense of saying no. You remain entangled in draining conversations with people who only ever take because disengaging feels rude. This is how a life quietly vanishes, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 tiny withdrawals from your finite account of time. Seneca urges us to guard our time more fiercely than our money because, unlike money, time can never be earned back. Once spent, it is gone forever. So how do you practically begin to reclaim this most precious resource? It starts with a shift in judgment. You must learn to evaluate requests not through the lens of, will they like me if I say yes, but through the lens of, is this a worthy exchange for a piece of my life? This new filter changes everything. A friend asks you to help them move. The nice guy reflex is an immediate, anxious yes, followed by a weekend of resentment and exhaustion. The Stoic practice is to pause. You consider your existing commitments, your need for rest, and the value of your time. You might determine that helping for 2 hours is a worthy investment in the friendship, but sacrificing your entire Saturday is not. Your response then becomes a conscious choice. I can't do the whole day, but I can be there from 9 to 11 to help with the heavy lifting. This is not selfish, it is respectful to both your friend and yourself. You have contributed meaningfully without bankrupting your own reserves. This principle extends powerfully to the relationships you maintain. Stoicism encourages social virtue and contributing to the common good, but it also demands wisdom. Investing your energy in a relationship that is consistently one-sided, manipulative, or emotionally toxic is like pouring your life's currency into a hole in the ground. It is not virtuous, it is wasteful. Setting a boundary with such a person is not an act of unkindness, it is an act of self-preservation and moral clarity. It is you declaring that your life is too valuable to be consumed by drama and negativity. This doesn't always require a dramatic confrontation. Often, it simply means gradually reducing the time and emotional investment you give to that person, consciously redirecting that energy toward relationships that are reciprocal and supportive, or toward your own personal growth and goals. You begin to treat your attention as a sacred trust, to be invested only in what aligns with your virtues and your purpose. By doing so, you stop living a life that feels like it is happening to you and start building a life that is authentically, meaningfully your own. This brings us to a 6th Stoic insight that might sound counterintuitive at first, but is ultimately one of the most liberating: the radical practice of loving your fate, or what the ancients called amor fati. While the dichotomy of control teaches us to focus only on our own actions and judgments, amor fati takes it a step further by teaching us not just to accept the things we cannot change, but to embrace them wholeheartedly as necessary parts of a well-lived life. The former slave and Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew more about harsh circumstances than most, laid the foundation for this when he said that happiness and freedom begin with understanding one simple thing: some things are within our control and some are not. He didn't just advise tolerating external events. He argued that we should welcome them without complaint, because fighting against reality is a battle we are guaranteed to lose, and it is this very struggle that causes our deepest suffering. For the nice guy, this is a game-changing perspective. So much of his anxiety and exhaustion comes from a desperate, often unconscious, need to control the uncontrollable. He tries to fix other people's problems, smooth over every conflict, and manage the emotions of everyone around him. He operates under the exhausting belief that it is his job to ensure everything is perfect for everyone else. And when life inevitably doesn't cooperate, when someone is upset, when a plan fails, when things get messy, he takes it as a personal failure. He internalizes the chaos of the external world, believing that if he were just better, smarter, or more agreeable, he could have prevented it. Amor fati releases you from that impossible burden. It asks you to stop trying to steer the river and instead learn to flow with it, trusting that the current has its own purpose. Imagine a common scenario. You've planned a detailed outing with a group of friends, hoping to create a perfect day that everyone will enjoy and thank you for. But then it rains, a restaurant is closed, and one friend is in a sour mood. The nice guy reflex is to go into overdrive. You apologize for the weather, you frantically search for a plan B, you try to cheer up your grumpy friend, and you end the day feeling stressed and responsible for everyone's disappointment. You tried to control the uncontrollable and failed. Now apply amor fati. The rain isn't a problem to be solved, it's part of the day's story. The closed restaurant isn't a failure of your planning, it's an opportunity for a spontaneous adventure. Your friend's mood is not your responsibility to fix, it is their own experience to manage. Your role is not to be the architect of a perfect reality, but to navigate the reality that exists with grace and character. You can choose to laugh in the rain, to enjoy the unexpected detour, and to offer kindness to your friend without taking ownership of their emotions. This shift from resistance to acceptance is how you find a profound and lasting inner peace. It means you can finally lay down the heavy armor of constant control and step into your life with a lighter heart. This doesn't make you passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it empowers you to pour your energy into the one thing you truly can control: your response. Your virtue, your effort, your integrity, these become your focus. You stop seeking approval by trying to manufacture perfect outcomes and start earning self-respect by handling imperfect outcomes with wisdom and courage. You begin to see every obstacle, every twist of fate, not as a threat to your identity as the nice guy, but as the very material you are meant to work with to build a stronger, more authentic character. The goal is no longer to have a smooth life, but to live a good one, and a good life is not defined by the absence of problems, but by the quality of your response to them. The seventh insight moves us from the realm of acceptance into the arena of action, focusing on the Stoic commitment to cultivating unshakable inner strength through conscious self-discipline. While the nice guy is often disciplined in his efforts to please others, meticulously remembering birthdays, always being available, constantly monitoring his words, this discipline is externally focused and therefore fragile. His sense of worth is a balloon tethered to the opinions of others, easily deflated by a single critical comment or a lack of gratitude. Stoicism reframes discipline not as a means to an external reward, but as the very expression of self-mastery and the foundation of authentic self-worth. It is the daily practice of aligning your actions with your virtues, regardless of whether anyone is watching or applauding. This concept of self-mastery was paramount to the Stoics. They viewed the undisciplined mind as a slave to every passing whim, emotion, and external event. A person without discipline is perpetually reactive, tossed about by the moods of others and the chaos of circumstance. In contrast, the disciplined individual is proactive, guided by an internal compass. For the recovering nice guy, this is the ultimate antidote to people-pleasing. When your primary goal shifts from earning praise to building a disciplined character, you are freed from the exhausting performance. You are no longer acting for an audience, you are acting for your own integrity. The reward is not a thank you, but the quiet, powerful knowledge that you did what was right, especially when it was difficult. Translating this philosophy into practice requires concrete, daily exercises. One of the most powerful is the establishment of a morning ritual rooted in intention, not reaction. Instead of grabbing your phone and immediately being pulled into the demands of the world, the Stoic practice is to claim the first hour for yourself. This isn't about productivity hacks, it's about alignment. You might begin with 5 minutes of meditation, simply observing your breath to center yourself in the present moment. Then you could read a short passage from a Stoic text, a single paragraph from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, to set your mind on virtues like courage and justice. Finally, and most crucially, you would preview your day, mentally walk through your upcoming interactions and commitments. Ask yourself, where might I be tempted to abandon my boundaries today? What difficult conversation have I been avoiding? How can I practice the virtue of courage in my 1 o'clock meeting? By anticipating these challenges, you prepare your response in advance, moving from a state of reaction to one of principled action. Another practical tool is the simple act of habit tracking focused on self-respect, not just productivity. Get a small notebook and create 2 columns. In the first, track your disciplined wins, not for crossing tasks off a list, but for moments you upheld your boundaries. Did you say no to a request that would have drained you? Mark it down. Did you voice a dissenting opinion in a meeting? Write it. Did you choose to go for a walk instead of scrolling through social media to numb your anxiety? That counts. The second column is for reflection. Each evening, review your entries without judgment. If you avoided a difficult task, ask yourself what fear was driving that avoidance. If you successfully held a boundary, acknowledge the momentary discomfort and recognize that you survived it. This practice reinforces a new neural pathway. The brain starts to associate the short-term unease of self-discipline with the long-term reward of genuine self-respect. Over time, the craving for external validation is replaced by the deeper, more satisfying satisfaction of self-trust. You are no longer building a resume for others to admire. You are forging a character you can respect, one disciplined choice at a time. The eighth insight moves us into the heart of social interaction, addressing one of the most common battlegrounds for the nice guy: communication. Stoicism offers a powerful, principle-based approach that the ancients called parrhesia, the practice of frank, honest, and courageous speech. This is not about being brutally blunt or domineering. It is the disciplined art of speaking with purpose and truth, ensuring your words are both necessary and kind. For someone accustomed to filtering every sentence through the lens of what others want to hear, this practice is transformative. The nice guy often uses language as a tool for appeasement. He over-apologizes for things that aren't his fault. He cushions his true opinions in layers of vague qualifiers, and he avoids difficult conversations altogether, fearing that honesty will rupture relationships. In doing so, he trades authentic connection for superficial harmony, and his words become a currency to buy approval rather than a bridge to build understanding. Contrast this with the guidance from the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius advised himself to speak only what is necessary and to use simple, direct language. Epictetus, ever the practical teacher, offered a powerful three-filter test for speech. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This framework is a radical departure from the nice guy's internal monologue, which is usually dominated by a single question: will this make them like me? The Stoic shift is to prioritize integrity over likability, and in doing so, you discover that respectful honesty is the only true foundation for any relationship worth having. When you speak with purpose, you are not being aggressive, you are being clear. You are respecting the other person enough to believe they can handle the truth, and you are respecting yourself enough to voice it. Implementing this begins with recognizing and eliminating the linguistic habits of self-diminishment. Notice how often you say sorry for simply occupying space, having an opinion, or making a reasonable request. Each unnecessary apology is a small act of self-erasure, subtly reinforcing the belief that your presence is an inconvenience. Replace "sorry to bother you, but" with a direct and respectful "I'd like to discuss" or "I need your input on." This isn't about removing politeness, it's about removing self-deprecation. Similarly, pay attention to qualifiers that dilute your message. Phrases like "this is probably a stupid idea, but" or "I'm not an expert, but" serve no purpose other to preemptively shield you from potential criticism. They invite the listener to discount what you're about to say. State your idea with clarity and own it. If it's challenged, you can defend it on its merits without having preemptively undermined your own position. For the tougher conversations, the ones you've been avoiding, the Stoic practice of premeditation is your greatest tool. Before entering the discussion, mentally rehearse staying calm and sticking to the facts. Define your objective clearly. What is the specific outcome you are seeking? What is the core truth that needs to be communicated? Write down your key points beforehand if it helps. During the conversation, focus on using "I" statements to express your perspective without assigning blame. Instead of saying "you always make me feel ignored," which can sound like an attack, try "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted, and I need to be able to finish my thoughts." This frames the issue around your experience and your needs, making it far more difficult for the other person to dismiss and much more likely to foster a productive dialogue. Remember, your goal is not to control their reaction that is outside your control. Your goal is to express your truth with courage and respect, and in that act alone, you reclaim a profound piece of your power and self-respect. Now we arrive at the ninth Stoic insight, a profound liberation from one of the heaviest chains holding the nice guy back, the desperate need for others' approval. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius confronted this human tendency with stark clarity in his private meditations. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." He saw the painful paradox at the heart of so much suffering. We are the ones who must live with ourselves every single moment of our lives, yet we hand over the remote control for our self-worth to a fickle and often indifferent world. For the nice guy, this isn't just a passing concern, it's the very architecture of his identity. His entire sense of self is built upon a foundation of external feedback. He constantly scans his environment for clues on how to act, what to say, and who to be, treating the opinions of others as the ultimate report card on his value. This turns him into a social chameleon, always blending in but never truly belonging, because the person he presents is a collage of other people's expectations. Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful antidote to this anxiety. He advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And elsewhere, he cut to the heart of the matter. "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." This isn't a call to become a narcissist who disregards everyone. It's a call to rebalance the scales, to recognize that your own reasoned judgment about your character and actions must carry infinitely more weight than the fleeting, often uninformed judgments of those around you. The nice guy is terrified of being judged, but in his quest to avoid any negative judgment, he submits to a far more oppressive judge, the constant internal critic that berates him for not being perfect enough to please everyone. So how do you begin to dismantle this deeply ingrained habit and build a self-validating core? The first step is to conduct a simple but revealing audit of your mental energy. For one day, consciously track how much time you spend ruminating on what someone might have thought about something you said or did. You'll likely be astonished by the sheer volume of mental real estate occupied by these uninvited tenants. The next step is to apply a dose of Stoic realism to these worries. Ask yourself two questions born from Marcus's wisdom. First, how does this person's opinion actually impact my life or my ability to act with virtue? 99% of the time, the answer is that it has zero tangible impact. Their opinion is a thought inside their head. It holds no power unless you grant it a lease in your own mind. Second, how well does this person truly know me, my intentions, and my values? Often, the opinions we fear are from people who have only a superficial understanding of our lives. Why would you outsource your self-esteem to a part-time critic? The practical work of building self-validation is a daily exercise in redirecting your focus. Instead of seeking praise, start tracking your own progress against your personal virtues. At the end of each day, don't ask, "Did everyone like me today?" Ask, "Did I act with courage today? Was I honest? Did I uphold my boundaries?" Your answers to these questions form the only valid report card. This internal scorecard becomes your source of confidence. Furthermore, practice deliberately doing things that might attract mild, irrelevant disapproval. Wear an outfit you like even if it's not trendy. Share a movie opinion you know is unpopular. Say no to a small request without offering a long, justifying explanation. Each time you do this and the world doesn't end, you collect evidence that your fear was a paper tiger. You prove to yourself that you can survive and even thrive without universal approval. This process forges a confidence that is no longer contingent on the applause of the crowd, but is built on the solid, unshakable ground of self-respect. You stop looking for yourself in the eyes of others and finally begin to see yourself clearly. The 10th insight invites us into a practice that redefines the very nature of giving and receiving, the cultivation of gratitude without any expectation of return. For the nice guy, acts of kindness are often clandestine transactions. He gives his time, his energy, his support, but hidden beneath the surface is a ledger where he meticulously records every debit. He expects reciprocity, appreciation, or at the very least, acknowledgement. When that expected return doesn't materialize, when the favor isn't repaid, the thank you isn't uttered, or the effort isn't recognized, he feels a deep sense of injustice and resentment. His generosity, which started as a virtue, curdles into a source of bitterness because it was never truly free. It was a loan issued with invisible strings attached. This is where Stoic gratitude offers a profound and liberating alternative. It teaches us to appreciate what we have and what we give for its own sake, divorcing the act entirely from the outcome. The Stoics viewed gratitude not as a fleeting emotion dependent on external events, but as a disciplined practice of perspective. Seneca, in his Moral Letters, wrote extensively about the importance of being thankful, not for what we might get in the future, but for what we already possess. He argued that a wise man is content with what he has, wishing for nothing more and nothing better. This mindset completely flips the script. Instead of giving in order to get something from someone else, you give because the ability to give itself is a gift. You help a friend move not to earn their eternal gratitude or a future favor, but because you are fortunate enough to have the health and strength to be of service. You listen to someone's problems not to be seen as a wonderful confidant, but because you value the connection and the trust they have placed in you. The act itself becomes the reward. This is gratitude in its purest form, an appreciation for the capacity to act virtuously, regardless of how it is received. Implementing this begins with a simple but powerful daily ritual, gratitude journaling with a specific Stoic twist. Most gratitude practices encourage you to list things you're thankful for, which is a great start. But to truly kill the nice guy mindset, you must take it a step further. Each evening, don't just write down, "I'm grateful for my health," or "I'm grateful for my friend." Frame your entries around your own agency and virtue. For example, "I am grateful I had the opportunity to be patient with my colleague today, even when it was difficult." Or, "I am grateful I could offer my time to listen to my sister without feeling the need to fix her problems." This shifts the focus from passive reception, "What good things happened to me," to active virtue, "What good things did I choose to do, and how fortunate am I to have had the chance?" This practice rewires your brain to associate positive feelings with the act of giving itself, not with the external validation that may or may not follow. Furthermore, use this practice to reframe past resentments. Think of a time you felt owed for a kindness. Perhaps you helped a coworker with a major project and they never acknowledged it. Instead of dwelling on their lack of gratitude, use your journal to reframe the event through a Stoic lens. Write, "I am grateful I had the skills to help my colleague successfully complete that project. My contribution was valuable, and that knowledge is its own reward." This isn't about pretending you don't wish people were more appreciative. It's about reclaiming your power so their appreciation is no longer a prerequisite for your peace. You dissolve the invisible ledger. When you give without expectation, you are truly free. Your kindness becomes a genuine expression of your character, not a strategic investment in social capital. This allows you to be generous from a place of abundance rather than lack, and it protects you from the slow poison of resentment that so often sickens the nice guy's heart. This brings us to a crucial and often misunderstood Stoic virtue, the 11th insight, acting with justice and fairness, not just toward others, but equally toward yourself. For the Stoics, justice was one of the 4 cardinal virtues, encompassing not only honesty and fair dealing in the world, but also a deep sense of duty to the common good. However, a modern nice guy often operates under a distorted version of this principle. He believes that being a good man means always putting others first, always being the one to yield, and avoiding any action that might be perceived as self-serving. In his quest to be perceived as fair and kind, he inadvertently perpetuates a profound injustice against himself. He allows his time to be disrespected, his energy to be exploited, and his boundaries to be constantly violated. This isn't justice, it's self-abandonment. The Stoic concept of justice is far more balanced. It requires you to treat others with integrity while also demanding that you honor your own worth. Failing to stand up for yourself isn't a virtuous act of humility. It's a failure of your duty to protect the valuable resource that is you, a resource that, if depleted, cannot be of service to anyone. Consider a workplace scenario where this imbalance plays out. A colleague consistently leaves early, dumping their unfinished work on your desk with a convincing story about a personal emergency. The nice guy, wanting to be a team player and avoid conflict, silently accepts the extra burden. He stays late, his own projects suffer, and he grows increasingly resentful. He tells himself he's being a good guy, but what he's actually doing is enabling irresponsible behavior. He is being unjust to himself by sacrificing his time and well-being, and he is being unjust to the broader team by allowing an imbalance that lowers overall morale and productivity. The Stoic approach, guided by true justice, would be to have a direct but respectful conversation. You could say, "I understand you're facing challenges and I want to be supportive. However, taking on your tasks regularly is impacting my ability to meet my own deadlines. I'm happy to help in a genuine emergency if you speak with our manager first, but I can't continue to absorb this extra work on a regular basis." This isn't unkind, it's fair. It protects your time, holds the other person accountable, and ultimately creates a healthier, more just dynamic for everyone involved. Balancing kindness with assertiveness is the practical application of this virtue. Kindness is the intention to do good. Assertiveness is the communication of your honest needs and limits. One without the other is incomplete. Kindness without assertiveness becomes self-sacrificing people-pleasing. Assertiveness without kindness can veer into aggression. The sweet spot is respectful honesty. This means you can be both a good person and a person who says no. You can be both compassionate and clear about your boundaries. For instance, if a friend repeatedly asks to borrow money, draining your finances and creating tension, the unjust response is to keep lending it while secretly seething. The just response is to say, "I care about you and want to support you, but lending money is damaging our friendship and my financial stability. I can't lend you any more money, but I am here to help you brainstorm other solutions." This approach meets the situation with both heart and backbone. It offers emotional support, the true currency of friendship, while firmly protecting a boundary that preserves the relationship's health and your own well-being. Acting with this full-spectrum justice allows you to contribute to the world not from a place of depleted resentment, but from a grounded, abundant, and truly virtuous core. The 12th insight invites you into a space the modern world often teaches us to fear: intentional solitude. In an era of constant connection and distraction, being alone with your own thoughts can feel uncomfortable, even alarming. We fill every spare moment with podcasts, social media, and background noise, often to avoid the quiet confrontation with ourselves. For the recovering nice guy, this aversion runs even deeper. His identity has been so externally defined, so intricately woven from the threads of others' expectations, that the prospect of sitting in silence feels like stepping into a void. Who is he without an audience to perform for, without someone else's needs to attend to? The Stoics, however, saw solitude not as a void to be feared, but as the essential workshop for self-discovery. Seneca wrote letters from his voluntary retreats, and Marcus Aurelius's meditations themselves are the ultimate product of solitary reflection. The private journal of the most powerful man in the world, written not for publication but for his own moral development. This practice is not about isolation or misanthropy. It is about periodically withdrawing from the chorus of external voices to hear your own. This deliberate withdrawal serves a critical purpose. It allows you to untangle your own authentic desires from the web of obligations and expectations you've accumulated. The nice guy is so accustomed to asking, "What do they want from me?" that he has forgotten how to ask, "What do I want for myself?" Solitude provides the quiet necessary to relearn that language. It is in these moments of stillness that you can begin to identify the people-pleasing patterns that operate on autopilot. Perhaps you notice a lingering anxiety after a social event, a feeling that you talk too much or too little. In solitude, you can gently interrogate that feeling. Is it based on a real social misstep, or is it simply the ghost of your old need for universal approval making one more appearance? Without the immediate impulse to call a friend for reassurance, another form of external validation, you sit with the discomfort and realize it holds no power over you. You slowly recalibrate your internal compass, learning to navigate by your own sense of true north rather than constantly looking to others for directions. A practical way to embrace this is through a guided reflective exercise, a modern take on the Stoic evening review. Set aside 20 minutes of uninterrupted time in a quiet space. You need only a notebook and a pen. Begin by taking a few deep breaths to center yourself, letting go of the day's clutter. Then, ask yourself these 3 questions, writing down your answers without judgment or censorship. First, today, when did I feel the strongest urge to people please? Pinpoint the specific moment. Was it when you agreed to take on that extra task? When you laughed at a joke you didn't find funny, when you held back your opinion in a meeting? Naming the instance is the first step to disarming it. Second, what was the specific fear driving that urge? Be brutally honest. Were you afraid of being seen as incompetent if you said you were too busy? Afraid of being labeled humorless or difficult? Afraid of creating conflict or awkwardness? Often, you'll find the fear is disproportionate and irrational. The mere possibility of mild, temporary disapproval felt like a life or death threat in the moment. Third, and most importantly, if I had acted according to my virtues instead of my fear, what would I have done differently? This is where you reclaim your agency. You are not just identifying the problem, you are scripting a new, empowered response for the future. Perhaps the answer is, I would have calmly stated that my plate is full and I cannot take on more without compromising my current work. Or I would have remained silent instead of laughing, affirming that my authenticity is more valuable than fitting in. This exercise does not breed self-criticism, it cultivates self-awareness. It transforms solitude from a passive state into an active training ground where you practice being the person you want to be, free from the noise of the world. Each session in this private workshop strengthens your connection to your core self, making it increasingly easier to access that self even amidst the chaos and demands of daily life. This brings us to the 13th and perhaps most visceral Stoic insight, one that strikes at the very heart of the nice guy's paralysis, the call to face your fears with direct and unwavering courage. The driving engine behind so much people-pleasing behavior is not a surplus of kindness, but a deficit of courage, specifically the courage to endure temporary discomfort, potential rejection, or social conflict. The nice guy's entire strategy is built on avoidance. He avoids saying no to avoid feeling guilty. He avoids asserting his opinion to avoid a debate. He avoids setting boundaries to avoid someone's anger or disappointment. In the short term, this feels like the safer path, but Stoicism reveals this avoidance as a profound error in judgment. By constantly running from these small fears, you are not making your life safer. You are confirming to your own psyche that these things are indeed monsters too terrifying to face. You are feeding the very anxiety you hope to escape. The Stoics argued that the only way to diminish a fear is to walk directly toward it, to expose it to the light of reason and action. and to prove to yourself through experience that you are far more capable of handling it than your imagination led you to believe. The historical Stoics didn't just preach this from a safe distance, they lived it in the most extreme circumstances. Consider the unyielding example of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator whose life was a masterpiece of Stoic conviction. In an era of rampant political corruption and shifting allegiances, Cato's defining quality was his fearless adherence to his principles, regardless of the personal cost. He stood against the populist and powerful Julius Caesar, not because he thought he would necessarily win, but because he believed it was right. He was booed in the forum, physically assaulted by rivals, and faced constant threats. Yet he never wavered. His courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else was more important than fear. For the nice guy, the stakes are thankfully much lower, but the psychological principle is identical. Your Caesar might be a domineering boss, a critical family member, or a friend who takes advantage of you. The courage required is not to launch a political rebellion, but to have that difficult conversation you've been dreading. Cato's lesson is that your integrity is worth any temporary social discomfort it might cause. By choosing to act with courage, you align yourself with a lineage of strength that far outweighs the fleeting approval of those who may not have your best interests at heart. To apply this today, you must first clearly identify the specific fear that is holding you back. It's rarely a vague sense of anxiety. It usually has a name and a face. Is it the fear of your father's criticism if you choose a career path he disapproves of? Is it the fear of your partner's emotional withdrawal if you express a need for more space? Or is it the fear of being ostracized from your friend group if you stop always being the available, easygoing one? Name it, write it down, then engage in a practice the Stoics would have endorsed: fear setting. This involves moving the fear from an abstract cloud of dread into a concrete set of propositions. First, define the worst-case scenario in stark, realistic detail. If you set that boundary, what is the absolute worst that could happen? Would they yell? Would they give you the silent treatment for a week? Would they end the friendship? Be specific. Next, assess the probability of that worst case actually happening. Our minds catastrophize, but often the realistic probability is far lower than we feel. Finally, and most importantly, ask yourself, even if the worst did happen, how would you cope? What would you do? Who are you without that person's approval? This process doesn't make the fear disappear, but it robs it of its overwhelming power. It becomes a manageable risk instead of an unthinkable catastrophe. Then you must take action. Courage is a virtue that only exists in action. Start small to build your confidence. If you're terrified of your boss's reaction, practice by first asserting a small boundary with a barrister who gets your order wrong, or with a telemarketer. Each small act of speaking up builds evidence in your nervous system that the world does not end when you advocate for yourself. Then move to the main event. Rehearse what you want to say. Focus on stating your truth calmly and clearly without aggression or apology. Remember, you cannot control their reaction. That is their domain. Your victory is not in achieving a specific outcome, but in having the courage to act according to your principles despite the fear. The moment you do this, a profound shift occurs. You are no longer a prisoner of the fear. You are a person who has faced it. Whether the other person responds with understanding or anger becomes almost secondary. The primary reward is the immense self-respect that floods in when you know you have finally chosen your own integrity over the illusion of safety. You realize that the approval you were so desperately trying to preserve was a cheap substitute for the genuine self-approval you've just earned. The 14th insight cuts through one of the most common habits of the nice guy persona: the tendency to overpromise. At its core, this is about prioritizing substantive actions over mere words, a principle the Stoics held in the highest regard. The philosopher Epictetus, who spent his early life as a slave, had a particularly low tolerance for empty talk. He famously said, "Don't explain your philosophy." Embody it. For him, and for Stoicism as a whole, your character was not defined by your intentions, your explanations, or your eloquent promises. It was defined solely by your actions, by what you actually did when faced with a choice. The nice guy, however, often operates in reverse. He uses words as a currency to purchase immediate social approval. He says yes to requests he knows he cannot fulfill. He makes grand pledges to be there for someone, to help with a project, to change a behavior, all because in that moment, the act of promising feels like the same thing as being helpful. It creates a temporary bond and a hit of validation. But when he inevitably fails to deliver, the word debt comes due with interest, eroding trust and reinforcing his own sense of being a fraud. This pattern creates a devastating cycle. Each broken promise, each unfulfilled commitment, is a small crack in the foundation of his self-esteem. He knows he said yes to please someone, not because he genuinely had the capacity to follow through. This misalignment between his words and his actions creates a persistent, low-grade anxiety, a feeling that he is constantly on the verge of being exposed as unreliable because in a way he is. He is unreliable to his own word. The Stoic solution is deceptively simple but requires immense discipline. Make your speech a direct reflection of your honest capability. This means learning to calibrate your commitments not to what will win you favor, but to what you can truthfully and consistently deliver. Your yes must become a sacred contract with yourself first and with others second. Implementing this begins with cultivating a pause between a request and your response. That tiny space is where you reclaim your power from the autopilot need to please. In that moment, ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Can I commit to this fully, willingly, and without resentment? If the answer isn't an immediate and enthusiastic yes, then your default answer must become a respectful no or a renegotiated terms. For instance, if a friend asks you to volunteer for a cause every weekend for a month, instead of instantly agreeing to secure their approval, you might say, I deeply support what you're doing, but I can't commit to every weekend. I can reliably give you the first Saturday of the month, and I will let you know if anything else opens up. This response is honest, it sets a clear and manageable boundary, and it is infinitely more respectable than a grandiose, yes, I'll be there, followed by a series of flaky excuses and last-minute cancellations. The profound benefit of this practice is that it forges relationships built on the bedrock of trust rather than the sand of flattery. People will stop seeing you as someone who says what they want to hear and start seeing you as someone whose word is ironclad. When you say you will do something, you do it. This consistency builds a reputation for integrity that is far more valuable than a reputation for being agreeable. It also transforms your internal world. The exhausting cognitive load of tracking all your unmet obligations vanishes. The guilt and anxiety that come from knowing you've overcommitted are replaced by the quiet confidence of knowing that your actions are in perfect alignment with your statements. You are no longer performing goodness, you are embodying it through reliable, virtuous action. This is how you transition from seeking approval to commanding genuine respect, both from others and, most importantly, from yourself. The 15th insight challenges us to completely reframe our relationship with difficulty, viewing every obstacle not as a nuisance to be avoided, but as the essential training ground for building an unbreakable character. This Stoic principle is one of the most empowering shifts a recovering nice guy can make, because it transforms his entire experience of setbacks and social friction. Where he once saw a conflict to be smoothed over or a rejection to be feared, he now sees a gym for his resilience. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant war, plague, and betrayal, wrote to himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This wasn't a platitude, it was his operating system. He understood that a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and a life without resistance never forges a strong character. For someone who has built an identity around avoiding discomfort, This is a revolutionary idea. His primary goal shifts from keeping everything calm and pleasant to actively seeking the strength that can only be earned through challenge. This perspective is the ultimate antidote to the victim mentality that often underpins nice guy behavior. When a setback occurs, a project fails, a date goes poorly, a friend becomes distant, the nice guy's old script is to internalize it as proof of his inadequacy. He thinks, if only I had been more agreeable, more helpful, more whatever they wanted, this wouldn't have happened. He sees the obstacle as a verdict on his worth. The Stoic reframe is to see the obstacle as neutral ground, a piece of raw material to be worked with. The event itself is not good or bad. Its value is determined solely by how you use it. A rejection isn't proof you're unlovable. It's an opportunity to practice dignity and self-respect in the face of disappointment. A professional failure isn't a mark of shame. It's a chance to practice humility, to learn, and to come back with better strategy. The obstacle becomes the very thing that forces you to develop the virtues you lack. To build this resilience muscle, you need practical exercises, not just philosophy. A powerful place to start is with a practice the Stoics called turning the obstacle upside down. When you encounter a problem that triggers your old people-pleasing anxiety, take a moment to physically write it down. Then deliberately list 3 ways this specific obstacle could actually be used to your advantage. For example, if your boss gives you harsh public criticism, your instinct might be to shrink away and apologize profusely. Instead, turn it upside down. First, this criticism is free, raw data on how to improve your performance, saving you from future mistakes. Second, it's an opportunity to practice receiving feedback with grace and composure, a mark of true professional maturity. Third, it's a chance to demonstrate your resilience to your team by how quickly and effectively you bounce back and implement the feedback. This exercise doesn't make the criticism feel good, but it empowers you by revealing the hidden utility within it. Another concrete method is to create a resilience resume. This isn't a list of your job skills, it's a private document where you record your past victories over adversity. Whenever you face a challenge and handle it with even a sliver of Stoic principle, when you have a difficult conversation, when you say no and withstand the guilt, when you fail and get back up, you add it to this resume. You literally write down, on this date I handled my friend's anger without apologizing for my boundary, or I remained calm and focused when my travel plans fell apart. This document becomes tangible evidence of your growing capability, a counter-argument to the inner voice that whispers you can't handle discomfort. On days when you feel the pull of the old patterns, you can review your resilience resume and be reminded that you have a proven track record of surviving and even thriving through difficulty. This builds a deep, evidence-based confidence that is no longer shaken by every new obstacle, because you know you have the tools and the history to turn what stands in the way into the way forward. The 16th Stoic insight invites us into a profound practice of self-regulation known as temperance, a virtue that calls for moderation and balance in all our actions and emotions. For the Stoics, temperance was not about deprivation or living an austere, joyless life. Instead, it was the wisdom to know what is enough, to recognize the point where a healthy, virtuous action tips over into a harmful excess. This principle strikes directly at the heart of the nice guy's core dysfunction, his tendency to operate in extremes. He often oscillates between 2 poles. On one end, he is excessively generous with his time, energy, and resources, giving until he is depleted and resentful. On the other, he can swing into a state of withdrawal and bitterness, feeling that his generosity was never reciprocated. This lack of balance is not sustainable, and more importantly, it is not virtuous. True Stoic virtue always seeks the middle path, the point of equilibrium that aligns with reason and preserves your own wholeness. Consider the common scenario of financial generosity. A friend is in a tight spot and asks to borrow a significant sum of money. The nice guy, wanting to be seen as a savior and a good friend, immediately agrees, even if it means straining his own finances. He gives the money without setting clear terms for repayment, operating from the extreme of excessive generosity. This isn't true kindness, it's a performance designed to buy gratitude and secure a relationship. When the loan isn't repaid, he doesn't feel he can ask for it back without seeming like a bad guy, so he swallows his frustration. His initial extreme action leads him directly into the opposite extreme of silent resentment, poisoning the friendship. The Stoic practice of temperance would guide a very different response. It would involve pausing to make a rational assessment. Can you truly afford to lend this money without causing yourself hardship? If so, what are the reasonable terms that protect both the friendship and your own financial health? A temperate response might be, I want to help you out. I can lend you this amount, and I'd feel most comfortable if we could put a simple plan in place for you to pay it back by this date. That way, I can help you without worry. This approach is balanced. It offers help from a place of genuine support, but it is framed within clear, respectful boundaries that prevent the act of giving from becoming an act of self-sabotage. This principle extends far beyond money into the very currency of your daily life, your time and emotional energy. The nice guy often says yes to every request for his time, cramming his schedule with obligations to others until he has no time left for his own health, his own goals, or simply rest. He believes this constant availability is the definition of being a good person. But Stoic temperance asks, is this moderate? Is this balanced? The answer is no. It is an extreme that leads to burnout. Practicing temperance means auditing your commitments through the lens of sustainability. It means recognizing that giving your time to others is a wonderful thing, but it must be balanced with giving time to yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. A practical way to implement this is to literally schedule your generosity. Block out time in your calendar for your own priorities first: your work, your health, your family, your solitude. Then look at the time that remains. That is the time you have available to give to others. When a new request comes in, you can consult your calendar honestly. If your available time is full, your temperate response is a respectful, I'm not able to take that on right now, or my schedule is committed until next month, could we look at it then? This isn't selfish, it's self-respectful. It ensures that when you do say yes, you can give fully and willingly without the undercurrent of resentment that comes from overcommitment. Ultimately, the goal of Stoic temperance is to reach a state where your actions are guided by choice, not compulsion. The nice guy is compelled to give by his fear of disapproval. The temperate man chooses to give as an expression of his values. This shift transforms every interaction. Your generosity becomes intentional, measured, and sustainable. You give not to be seen as a limitless resource, but as a person who wisely manages his resources so he can be genuinely helpful without self-destruction. You learn to receive gracefully as well, understanding that accepting help when you need it is also a form of balance and allows others the opportunity to practice their own virtue. By finding this middle path, you escape the exhausting pendulum swing between extreme self-sacrifice and bitter withdrawal. You build a life of steady, reliable strength where your kindness is never a weakness because it is always protected by the wise, moderating force of your own self-respect. Now we arrive at our 17th insight, a directive that calls for a fundamental reordering of your deepest motivations, the call to seek wisdom over popularity. This is where Stoicism invites you to shift the entire axis of your life, to move from a horizontal pursuit of external validation to a vertical pursuit of internal truth. The Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher Seneca drove this point home with piercing clarity when he wrote, "The first thing which philosophy undertakes to give is fellow feeling with all men, in other words, sympathy and sociability." He wasn't talking about being popular, he was talking about a deep, principled connection to humanity that comes from a place of understanding, not a need to be liked. For the nice guy, this is a complete reframe. His entire social strategy is built on the shaky foundation of popularity, of being agreeable, helpful, and inoffensive to ensure he is included and approved of. But this is a superficial and exhausting way to live because popularity is fickle, ephemeral, and entirely outside your control. Wisdom, on the other hand, is a fortress you build within yourself, brick by brick, through continuous learning and reflection. It is permanent, it is yours, and it cannot be taken away by the shifting opinions of the crowd. This pursuit naturally redefines what it means to be effective in your interactions. The nice guy believes effectiveness is measured by how smoothly an interaction goes and how much people like him afterward. This often leads him to avoid difficult truths, to withhold constructive criticism, and to enable poor behavior, all in the name of maintaining a shallow harmony. The wisdom seeker, guided by Stoic virtue, measures effectiveness differently. Effectiveness is about whether an interaction was truthful, whether it was just, and whether it contributed to the genuine good of all involved, even if it caused temporary friction. A wise person understands that sometimes the most effective and ultimately kind thing you can do is to tell a hard truth that helps someone grow, even if it initially displeases them. Your focus shifts from "did they like me" to "was I honest, was I fair, did I act with courage?" This shift liberates you from the anxiety of performance and allows you to engage with the world from a place of authentic contribution. To embark on this path, you need resources that fuel this new pursuit. The good news is that the wisdom of the Stoics is more accessible now than at any point in history. You don't need a private library or a personal tutor. You have a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips. Start with the primary texts themselves. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the essential starting point. It is not a formal philosophical treatise, but the private thoughts of a man wrestling with how to be good amidst immense power and pressure. Read it slowly, a page or two a day, and reflect on how each passage applies to a current challenge in your life. Next, turn to the Discourses and Enchiridion of Epictetus. These are more direct teachings, practical manuals for applying Stoic principles to daily living. Finally, explore the letters of Seneca, which are filled with profound advice on everything from managing anger to dealing with grief, all written in a conversational, accessible style. But don't stop with the ancients. The modern Stoic movement has produced incredible contemporary teachers who can help bridge the gap between ancient philosophy and 21st century life. Authors like Ryan Holiday have done phenomenal work translating Stoic wisdom into practical, everyday advice through books like The Daily Stoic and Courage is Calling. Podcasts like the Daily Stoic podcast or Stoic Meditations offer short, daily reflections you can listen to on your commute. The goal is to create a daily drip feed of wisdom, a small but consistent habit of learning that gradually rewires your default priorities from seeking applause to seeking understanding. This continuous learning is the practical engine that drives the transformation from a man who needs to be liked to a man who is grounded, effective, and truly wise. This brings us to the 18th insight, one that serves as the ultimate catalyst for personal transformation: the radical act of taking full responsibility for your own life. This is perhaps the most empowering and simultaneously challenging Stoic principle, because it demands that you relinquish a story you may have been telling yourself for years, the story of the victim. The nice guy mindset is often underpinned by a subtle, sometimes unconscious sense of victimhood. He might feel victimized by others' demands, by their lack of appreciation, or by the sheer weight of the expectations placed upon him. This story allows him to explain away his own resentment and inaction. The Stoics, however, offer no such refuge. They draw a bright, unyielding line between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. As Epictetus, who was literally a victim of slavery, put it, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This isn't a callous dismissal of real hardship. It is a declaration of ultimate personal power. It means that while you may not control every event, you always retain sovereignty over your judgments, your intentions, and your actions. For the nice guy, this is the key that unlocks the prison door. He can stop blaming others for his exhaustion and start examining the choices that led him there. This shift from blame to ownership is the fundamental difference between a reactive and a proactive life. The reactive nice guy feels that his life is something that is happening to him. His calendar is full because people keep asking him for things. His energy is drained because others are so needy. His boundaries are crossed because people are disrespectful. This perspective makes him a passenger in his own life, constantly responding to the actions of others. The Stoic, by taking responsibility, moves into the driver's seat. He understands that his calendar is full because he chose to say yes to those requests. His energy is drained because he chose not to set limits. His boundaries were crossed because he chose not to enforce them. This reframe is not about self-blame, it is about reclaiming agency. It is the profound recognition that if you are responsible for the problem, you are also empowered to be the source of the solution. You are no longer waiting for the world to change, you are equipped to change your approach to the world. To put this into practice, a powerful tool is what we can call the Stoic Ownership Journal. This is not a typical diary of events, but a focused log of your judgments and choices. The framework is simple but transformative, built around 3 core questions you ask yourself each evening. First, what was one situation today where I felt frustrated, resentful, or taken advantage of? Be specific. Perhaps it was when your coworker left early again, dumping their work on you. Second, and this is the crucial pivot, what was my role in creating or allowing that situation? This is where you move from blame to ownership. Your role wasn't that your coworker is irresponsible. Your role was that you silently accepted the work without stating your own limits. You allowed it. Third, based on this, what is one different choice I can make tomorrow to reclaim my responsibility? This moves you from reflection to action. The different choice might be, tomorrow I will tell my coworker that I cannot take on their tasks and that they need to speak with our manager before they leave. This practice systematically rewires your brain to look for your own leverage in every frustrating situation, transforming you from a passive character in your story into its author. Embracing this level of responsibility also means gracefully accepting the full consequences of your actions, both intended and unintended. The nice guy often makes choices hoping to avoid any negative fallout. He says yes to avoid guilt. He stays silent to avoid conflict. But life doesn't work that way. Every choice has a consequence. The consequence of always saying yes is burnout. The consequence of never setting boundaries is resentment. The Stoic accepts this chain of cause and effect with clear eyes. When you make a choice, you are also consciously accepting the consequences that come with it. If you choose to end a toxic friendship, you accept the consequence of loneliness in the short term, trusting that it is better than the long-term consequence of emotional drain. If you choose to speak up in a meeting, you accept the consequence of potential disagreement, valuing the integrity of your contribution over the temporary comfort of silence. This mature acceptance dissolves the nice guy's fantasy of a risk-free life where everyone is always happy. It allows you to move through the world with purpose, making decisions based on your principles and meeting the outcomes, whatever they may be, with the calm dignity that comes from knowing you acted as the author of your own life. The 19th insight moves us from the realm of self-mastery into the world of connection, focusing on the profound Stoic call to cultivate authentic relationships. This principle asks you to shift your entire approach to social life from seeking quantity of approval to building quality of character in your connections. The nice guy often operates under a misguided belief that his worth is measured by how many people like him, leading him to spread his energy thinly across a wide network of shallow, transactional relationships. He is the reliable helper, the always available listener, the person who never says no. But this strategy, while it may generate a busy social calendar, often leaves him feeling deeply lonely and unseen. The Stoics, valuing social virtue and duty, were not advocating for isolation. However, they were fiercely discerning about the quality of their associations. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of carefully choosing your company, noting that just as you wouldn't want to eat rotten food, you shouldn't ingest corrupt character. He advised, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. This isn't about social climbing, it's about a mutual commitment to growth and virtue. An authentic relationship, in the Stoic sense, is one where both parties are dedicated to becoming better versions of themselves and hold each other to a higher standard, not one where they simply enable each other's weaknesses or trade in empty flattery. For the recovering nice guy, this means learning to audit his social circle with a new set of criteria. The question is no longer, do they like me? But is this relationship mutually beneficial and grounded in respect? A genuinely supportive connection is one where your boundaries are not seen as obstacles to be overcome, but as reasonable expressions of your autonomy. It is a relationship where you can say no without fear of the friendship collapsing, where your successes are celebrated without jealousy, and where difficult truths can be spoken with kindness and received without defensiveness. In contrast, a superficial or toxic relationship is one that drains your energy, disrespects your time, and only values you for what you can provide. The Stoic practice here is to have the courage to consciously and gradually invest less in these draining dynamics and redirect that precious energy toward people who reciprocate your effort and respect your wholeness. Building these nourishing connections requires a new set of skills, moving from passive pleasing to active engagement. It starts with becoming the kind of person who attracts authentic relationships by embodying the virtues you seek in others. This means practicing the Stoic principles we've discussed: clear communication, unwavering boundaries, and disciplined action, not as a performance but as an expression of your character. When you stop people-pleasing, you naturally repel those who are only interested in what they could take from you, and you begin to attract those who are interested in who you truly are. Furthermore, you can actively foster depth in your existing healthy relationships by shifting the nature of your conversations. Instead of defaulting to small talk about weather or sports, practice asking questions that invite vulnerability and reflection. You might ask a friend, "What's a challenge you're currently facing that you're proud of how you're handling it?" Or, "Is there an area of your life where you feel you're not living in alignment with your values?" These questions, born from a place of genuine curiosity rather than a need to fix, create space for real connection. They signal that you value the other person's inner world, not just their external persona. By both becoming a person of substance and consciously seeking substance in others, you slowly weave a social safety net made of strong, reliable thread. A community that doesn't just like the version of you that serves them, but respects and supports the real you on your journey toward a virtuous life. Imagine being so completely absorbed in a conversation that you're not mentally rehearsing what to say next to sound impressive, or tackling a difficult task without the background noise of worrying about who might be disappointed. This state of full engagement is at the heart of our 20th Stoic insight, the profound power of mindfulness and presence. While the term mindfulness might sound modern, its core is deeply Stoic. The philosophy relentlessly calls us to anchor our attention not in the ghosts of the past or the imagined futures that cause us anxiety, but in the only reality we can ever truly experience, the present moment. For the nice guy whose mental landscape is often a minefield of regret over past social missteps and anxiety about future approvals, this practice is nothing short of liberation. It is the practical tool that allows you to step off the hamster wheel of overthinking and finally show up to your own life. the Stoic argument for presence is built on a starkly rational foundation. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Stick with the situation at hand. Anxiety about what someone might think of you later is a flight of imagination into a future you cannot control. Regret over an awkward comment you made yesterday is a journey into a past you cannot change. Both are forms of mental time travel that drain your energy and pull you away from the only arena where you have any real agency, the here and now. The nice guy's people-pleasing is almost always a future-oriented activity. He is constantly projecting forward, trying to manage and manipulate outcomes to ensure he remains in everyone's good graces. This creates a life lived in a tense, hypothetical future, causing him to miss the richness and the cues of the actual moment he is in. By practicing presence, you withdraw that mental energy from things outside your control and pour it fully into your current action, which is always within your control. You can begin weaving this into your daily life with simple, actionable exercises that require no special equipment or lengthy meditation sessions. Start with the Stoic practice of morning intention. Before you even check your phone, take 60 seconds upon waking. Sit on the edge of your bed, feel your feet on the floor, and take 3 deep, conscious breaths. Then set a simple intention for the day. Today, I will focus on doing what is right, not on being seen as right. Or, today, I will listen to understand, not to craft my response. This isn't about crafting a complex plan. It's about anchoring your mind in a virtuous purpose before the world's demands rush in. Throughout your day, use your senses as an anchor to drag your attention back from its anxious wanderings. The Stoics called this bringing your mind back to the task at hand. If you find yourself spiraling before a meeting, worried about how you'll be perceived, pull your focus to your physical senses. Feel the texture of the notebook in your hands. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Listen to the specific tones of voices around you. This isn't avoidance. It's a tactical reset that grounds you in the reality of the present where your power resides. In conversations, practice the discipline of full attention. When someone is speaking, make a conscious effort to listen to their words without simultaneously drafting your reply. Notice the impulse to people please as it arises, that knee-jerk desire to agree or compliment, and simply observe it without immediately acting on it. That tiny pause creates a space for choice. You can then choose to respond based on your genuine thoughts and values, not from a reflexive need to be liked. Finally, adopt the Stoic evening review not as a session of self-criticism, but as a mindful ritual of closure. Reflect on your day with curiosity. When did you feel most present and engaged? When did your mind drift into anxiety about approval? Simply note these moments without judgment. The goal is not to achieve perfect presence, but to become more aware of the tug of war between being here and being lost in your thoughts about there. Each time you gently guide your attention back to the present, you are strengthening a mental muscle. Over time, this practice fundamentally rewires your relationship with social anxiety. The approval of others loses its grip because you are too immersed in the quality of your own actions and the reality of the current moment to be constantly scanning the horizon for potential judgment. You discover that the greatest acceptance you can ever find is not in the future smiles of others, but in your own full, unwavering presence within your life, right here, right now. Imagine the crushing weight of trying to be perfect in every interaction, to never say the wrong thing, to always be the most helpful, to ensure you are never the source of anyone's disappointment. This is the exhausting burden the nice guy carries, a self-imposed sentence of constant anxiety. The 21st Stoic insight offers a key to unlock these chains, the deliberate embrace of imperfection and the wisdom to be found in failure. Stoicism, at its core, is a philosophy for flawed human beings navigating an unpredictable world. It never expected perfection, it expected progress. The Roman philosopher Seneca offered a liberating perspective when he wrote, everywhere, dear Lucilius, a person's shortcomings are where that person's best hopes lie. For where would any gardener's pride be if his plants never drooped and his flowers never faded? He saw our stumbles not as marks of shame, but as the very soil from which strength and character grow. For the person trapped in the nice guy pattern, this is a paradigm shift. His entire identity is built on the illusion that he can and should be perfect to earn love and approval. But this quest is a trap. It makes him risk-averse, terrified of making a mistake, and therefore incapable of the very actions that lead to genuine growth and self-respect. This insight is grounded in the Stoic concept of amor fati, the love of fate which we discussed earlier but applied here to our own missteps. It's about learning to not just accept your failures, but to welcome them as your most effective teachers. The goal is not to bumble through life aimlessly, but to adopt a mindset of experimentation and learning. Each social blunder, each rejected request, each moment you fail to live up to your own idealized image becomes a data point, not a verdict. The nice guy fears failure because he believes it will lead to rejection. The Stoic understands that the only true failure is the failure to learn, to adapt, and to courageously try again. This approach transforms your relationship with your own humanity. You are no longer a statue that must remain pristine and unchipped. You are a living, learning, adaptive being whose value is measured by your resilience and your capacity to grow, not by an unblemished record. Consider a practical scenario. You finally gather the courage to ask for a raise you know you deserve. You've prepared your points, but in the meeting you get nervous. Your voice shakes, you fumble a key statistic, and your boss says no. The nice guy's old script would interpret this as a catastrophic personal failure. He would replay the moment endlessly, wallowing in shame, and likely decide never to ask again, reinforcing a story of his own inadequacy. The Stoic response is to conduct a post-mortem without the self-flagellation. You would calmly analyze the event. What went well? I stated my initial case clearly. What could I improve? I needed more data to support my argument, and I should have practiced more to manage my nerves. What did I learn? That the world didn't end when I was told no, and that my value as an employee isn't shattered by one conversation. This objective analysis allows you to file the experience away as a lesson, not a life sentence. You can then prepare more thoroughly and try again in 6 months, now equipped with harder data and a calmer demeanor born from the knowledge that you can survive the outcome. History is filled with powerful examples of this principle in action. Look at the life of Thomas Edison, who, while not a Stoic philosopher, embodied this resilient spirit. His famous quote, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work," is a masterpiece of Stoic reframing. He didn't see each unsuccessful attempt at creating the light bulb as a failure that defined his worth. He saw it as a necessary step that eliminated an option and brought him closer to success. For the nice guy, his 10,000 ways that won't work are the 10,000 times he said yes when he meant no, the 10,000 times he remained silent to keep the peace, the 10,000 times he prioritized someone else's comfort over his own needs. These are not failures of character, they are experiments in people-pleasing that have yielded a clear result. The strategy doesn't work, it leads to exhaustion and resentment. Armed with this data, he is now free to experiment with a new strategy, respectful honesty. The first few attempts might feel clumsy. He might say no and then over-explain. He might set a boundary and then feel a surge of guilt. But these aren't failures, they are the first few attempts in a new series of experiments, each one providing valuable feedback on the path to building a more authentic and effective way of living. This practice of embracing imperfection ultimately builds a different kind of confidence, one that is anti-fragile. An ego built on being perfect is incredibly fragile. The slightest criticism can shatter it. But a sense of self built on the proven ability to stumble, learn, and get back up becomes stronger with every challenge. It is a confidence rooted in reality, not in fantasy. You stop presenting a polished, perfect facade to the world and start showing up as a real, complex, and capable human being. This authenticity is magnetic. It attracts genuine connections because people are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, flaws and all. They trust you more because they see that you are honest and they feel permission to be imperfect around you. By letting go of the need to be perfect in the eyes of others, you don't become worse, you become real. And in that reality, you find a freedom and a strength that no amount of external approval could ever provide. Setting clear boundaries is not an act of aggression. It is a profound act of self-respect and a direct application of Stoic virtue. The ancient Stoics understood that we are each responsible for our own domain, our mind, our choices, our energy, and that protecting this inner citadel is our primary duty. A boundary, in the Stoic sense, is simply the line where your responsibility ends and another's begins. For the nice guy who has spent a lifetime erasing this line to avoid conflict, the very idea of drawing it can feel like a betrayal of his identity. He confuses boundaries with walls, seeing them as unkind barriers rather than the necessary gates that allow for healthy and respectful exchange. But the philosophy offers a powerful reframe. A boundary is not a keep out sign, it is a this is me declaration. It is the way you teach people how to treat you, and in doing so, you honor both yourself and them by engaging in a relationship based on truth rather than manipulation and resentment. Communicating these limits without the weight of guilt requires anchoring your reasoning in Stoic principles, not in fleeting emotion. Your conviction must come from the understanding that you are practicing the virtues of justice and temperance. Justice, because you are giving yourself the same fair treatment you readily offer others. Temperance, because you are wisely moderating the energy you expend to ensure you do not deplete your capacity for genuine contribution. When you say no to a request that would drain you, you are not being selfish. You are being just to your own needs and responsible with your resources, ensuring that when you do say yes, you can offer your full and willing presence. This shift in perspective transforms the act of boundary setting from a fearful confrontation into a principled stand. The goal is not to control the other person's reaction. That is firmly outside your control, but to control your own action by choosing to act with integrity. Let's translate this into practical language. The key to saying no gracefully is to be clear, concise, and kind, without offering a long list of justifications that invite negotiation. Here are a few script examples tailored to common nice guy scenarios. For the friend who consistently asks for last-minute favors that disrupt your plans, you might say, "I really value our friendship and I'm flattered you thought of me. I can't help out this time as I have prior commitments I need to honor." Notice the structure, affirmation of the relationship, a clear no, and a reason that focuses on your own priorities without apology. If a family member repeatedly crosses a line with unsolicited advice, a Stoic response focuses on your own experience rather than their flaw. "I appreciate that you're coming from a place of care. For me to make the best decision, I need to work through this on my own. I'll definitely let you know if I want to brainstorm together." This asserts your autonomy without attacking their character. In a professional context where a colleague habitually dumps their work on you, clarity is paramount. "I understand you're under pressure with this project. Taking on this task would prevent me from giving my own work the attention it requires. I'd recommend we bring this to our manager to discuss redistributing the workload fairly." This response is professional, cites a factual limitation, and offers a solution that addresses the root problem rather than just applying a temporary band-aid. The underlying theme in all these examples is that you are not rejecting the person, you are respectfully upholding a principle. You might feel a surge of guilt initially, that's the old programming kicking in, but you meet that feeling with the rational understanding that you are acting justly. Each time you hold the line, you collect evidence that the world does not end, relationships do not crumble, and your self-respect grows stronger. You are not building walls to keep people out. You are drawing a map of your own character for others to see, inviting them into a more honest and sustainable connection. This brings us to the 23rd insight, a profound reorientation of purpose that can permanently dissolve the need for external applause. Focus on contribution, not recognition. This Stoic principle cuts directly against the grain of the nice guy's hidden economy, where acts of kindness are often silent investments with an expected return of gratitude and praise. The ancient Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, constantly reminded themselves that their duty was to the common good, to the role they were born to play in the larger human community. The reward for a virtuous action was the action itself, the knowledge that you had played your part well and contributed to the whole. Any external recognition was merely a potential bonus, an indifferent that had no bearing on the inherent value of the act. For someone who has been feeding his self-worth on the crumbs of others' approval, this shift is revolutionary. It means you can finally be free to do good for its own sake, to find a deep and lasting fulfillment in the quiet knowledge that you made a difference, whether anyone ever noticed or not. This focus on contribution provides a powerful antidote to the exhaustion of people-pleasing. The nice guy's generosity is often transactional and draining because he is constantly monitoring the return on his emotional investment. Did they say thank you? Did they notice my effort? Was it enough? This turns every act into a high-stakes performance. In contrast, Stoic contribution is sustainable and energizing because it is intrinsic. The satisfaction comes from within. You help your neighbor carry groceries not because you want them to think you're a great guy, but because it is the right and helpful thing to do. The act itself completes the circuit of fulfillment. You are no longer left waiting and hoping for external validation to close the loop. You close it yourself the moment you act in accordance with your virtue. This allows you to give from a place of genuine abundance because your energy is replenished by the meaning of the action, not depleted by the anxiety of whether it will be rewarded. To put this into practice, the most effective method is to engage in volunteer work or community service that is deeply aligned with your personal values, not your resume. The goal is not to choose the most visible or prestigious cause, but the one that resonates most authentically with what you care about. If you value compassion, you might find profound fulfillment in walking dogs at an animal shelter where the only recognition is a wagging tail. If you value justice, you might volunteer at a food bank, sorting donations anonymously in a back room. The key is to consciously decouple the act of giving from any possibility of personal acclaim. As you perform this work, practice a form of mental framing. With each task, silently affirm to yourself, I am doing this because it needs to be done and I am capable of doing it. That is enough. This reinforces the Stoic belief that the opportunity to contribute is its own reward. Over time, this practice rewires your sense of self. You begin to define yourself not by how you are perceived, but by what you consistently do for the world without fanfare. You are no longer the nice guy who helps everyone. You become a person of substance who contributes quietly and effectively to things that matter. This builds a quiet, unshakable confidence that is immune to the opinions of others because it is built on a foundation of tangible, meaningful action. You know who you are and what you stand for because you have the evidence of your own contributions, evidence that does not require anyone else's signature or approval to be valid. This is the ultimate freedom from the need for recognition, a life lived in purposeful service, where the greatest reward is the private knowledge that you have played your part well. Where does your true worth actually come from? Is it something others grant you, or is it something you build from within? This leads us to the 24th and perhaps most foundational Stoic insight for dismantling the nice guy mindset, developing a strong and unshakable sense of self-worth that is entirely independent of external validation. The Stoics argued with unwavering clarity that your value as a human being is not a fluctuating stock price determined by the opinions, approval, or treatment you receive from others. It is a fixed and non-negotiable fact rooted in your capacity for reason and your potential to act with virtue. For someone who has spent a lifetime seeking his worth in the smiles and affirmations of those around him, this idea is both terrifying and utterly liberating. It means you can finally step off the exhausting treadmill of performance and realize that you are inherently valuable, not for what you do for others, but for who you are at your core, a rational being capable of courage, justice, wisdom, and self-discipline. This internal source of worth is what the Stoics called your prohersis, your fundamental character, your ruling reason, your capacity for moral choice. This is the only thing that is truly, unquestionably good. Everything else, your job title, your social status, your wealth, even your physical health, the Stoics classified as preferred indifference. They might be nice to have and worth pursuing virtuously, but they have no bearing on your moral worth. You can be a good person whether you are rich or poor, praised or criticized, loved or rejected. Your character exists in a realm that others cannot touch. This is the ultimate empowerment for the recovering nice guy. It means that someone's disapproval cannot diminish you unless you willingly hand them that power through your own judgment. Your self-esteem ceases to be a fragile vase placed in the hands of others and becomes a fortress built on the bedrock of your own consistent virtues. To build this fortress, you need daily practices that reinforce this new internal scorecard. One of the most powerful is to begin and end your day with a simple Stoic affirmation, not as empty positive thinking, but as a deliberate realignment of your values. Upon waking, look in the mirror and state with conviction, "My worth today is not for sale. It will not be increased by praise or decreased by criticism. My only goal is to act with virtue." This sets your intention before the world's demands come rushing in. In the evening, as you reflect, ask yourself, did I live according to my principles today? Did I choose courage over comfort? Did I choose honesty over appeasement? Your answers to these questions become the true measure of your day, replacing the old metric of "did everyone like me?" Another transformative practice is to conduct a virtue audit instead of a popularity contest. Keep a small journal and each day record one instance where you acted from a place of internal integrity rather than a desire for external approval. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Perhaps you finally voiced a minor disagreement in a meeting instead of nodding along. Maybe you politely declined an invitation you didn't want to accept without fabricating an elaborate excuse. Or perhaps you simply spent an hour working on a personal project without feeling the need to post about it for validation. Write it down. This practice actively collects evidence for your new, self-validating belief system. Over time, this journal becomes a tangible record of your growing character, a personal testament to your worth that is entirely separate from the noisy and often fickle opinions of the outside world. You are no longer building your self-esteem on the shifting sand of others' moods. You are pouring a foundation of concrete evidence, one virtuous choice at a time, proving to yourself through action that you are who you decide to be. And now we arrive at the final, culminating insight, the one that binds all the others together into a coherent and powerful way of being, the call to live with profound purpose and intentionality. This is the ultimate antidote to the nice guy's drift, his tendency to let his life be shaped by the demands and desires of everyone around him. Without a central purpose, your energy scatters. You become a tool for other people's priorities, a supporting character in their stories, while your own narrative remains unwritten. The Stoics believed that a life without a self-directed purpose is a life wasted. Seneca put it bluntly when he said, "For if a man does not know to what port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. For the recovering nice guy, this is the master key." It's the shift from asking, "What do they want from me?" to the far more powerful and grounding question, What is my mission here? Your purpose becomes your inner compass, allowing you to evaluate every request, every opportunity, and every relationship through a single clarifying lens. Does this move me closer to my port, or does it blow me off course? This is not about crafting a grandiose, world-changing life plan. It's about defining a personal operating system, a set of core principles that will guide your smallest daily actions just as much as your largest life decisions. A life of intentionality means that you are the author of your days. You don't just react to what lands in your inbox or what pops up on your phone. You proactively structure your time and direct your energy toward what you have determined is meaningful. For someone used to being pulled in a dozen different directions, this practice is the source of incredible focus and calm. When a request comes in that clashes with your mission, saying no is no longer an act of rejection, it is an act of affirmation. You are saying a bigger yes to your own purpose. This is how you finally stop feeling guilty for prioritizing yourself, because you understand that you're not being selfish, you're being strategic with the one life you have been given. So how do you begin to define this purpose if you've spent a lifetime following someone else's script? The most practical and powerful way is to create a personal mission statement. This isn't a corporate buzzword, it's a Stoic exercise in self-definition. Think of it as your philosophical charter, a brief declaration of your core values and the character you strive to embody. It serves as a touchstone you can return to anytime you feel lost or pulled back into old patterns. To create one, find a quiet hour for deep reflection. Ask yourself the most important questions. What virtues do I most admire? What legacy do I want my daily actions to leave? How do I want to show up for the people I love? What kind of man do I want to be at my core? Your answers won't be about achievements or accolades, but about character. They might include being a man of unwavering integrity, a protective and supportive partner, a calm leader in times of chaos, or a generous contributor to your community. Then distill these reflections into a few concise sentences. Write them in the present tense as if you are already living them. For example, my mission is to meet each day with courage and curiosity. I lead with honesty in my relationships and protect my peace with clear boundaries. I use my energy to build up those around me and to pursue work that challenges me to grow. I accept what I cannot change and take full responsibility for my judgments and actions. This is your charter. Write it down. Keep it where you will see it every day, on your phone's lock screen, taped to your bathroom mirror, in the front of your journal. This statement is your personal philosophy summarized. It is the port you are sailing toward. Let this statement be the final filter for your decisions. Before you say yes, glance at your mission. Does this align? Before you engage in a conflict, remember your mission. How would the man I aspire to be handle this? This simple practice brings the entire Stoic journey full circle. Focusing on what you control becomes easier because your mission is entirely within your control. Embracing discomfort becomes purposeful because it's the friction that strengthens your character. Setting boundaries becomes natural because they guard the time and energy needed for your mission. Seeking wisdom over popularity is the direct result, as your mission values truth over tribal approval. Every single insight we've explored finds its home and its highest expression in this one practice, living a life of your own deliberate design. You are no longer the nice guy. You are a man with a mission, guided by virtue, moving through the world with intention and purpose. And so we reach the end of our journey through these 25 Stoic insights, each one a deliberate strike against the foundations of the nice guy mindset. We began by learning to focus only on what is within our control, reclaiming our energy from the futile pursuit of managing others' opinions. We embraced discomfort as the necessary training ground for courage, and we practiced negative visualization to disarm our deepest anxieties about rejection and disapproval. We committed to living by our own nature and virtues, understanding that true goodness is found in integrity, not in agreeability. we recognized our time as our most precious resource and began to guard it with fierce intentionality. We learned to love our fate, embracing every obstacle as the very way forward, and we cultivated unshakable inner strength through daily self-discipline. We practiced speaking with honest purpose, and we systematically dismantled our addiction to external approval, building a self-validating core that needs no applause. We discovered how to give generously without expectation, finding gratitude in the act itself rather than in the reward. We embraced a fuller definition of justice, one that includes fair treatment of ourselves, and we sought the clarifying power of solitude to hear our own voice again. We faced our fears head-on, recognizing that courage is a muscle built through action, and we prioritized substantive action over empty words, making our promises ironclad. We reframed every obstacle as a chance to build resilience, and we found balance through the virtue of temperance, learning that sustainable generosity requires saying no. We chose the pursuit of wisdom over the hollow chase of popularity, and we took full and radical responsibility for our lives, moving from a reactive victim to a proactive author of our own story. We invested in authentic relationships built on mutual respect, not transactional need, and we anchored ourselves in the profound power of the present moment through mindfulness. We embraced our beautiful imperfections, welcoming failure as our most effective teacher, and we learned to set clear, compassionate boundaries as an act of self-respect. We shifted our entire focus from seeking recognition to making genuine contribution, and we built an unshakable sense of self-worth that is independent of anyone else's validation. Finally, we tied it all together by defining a personal mission, living with a purpose and intentionality that makes every choice clear and every no a confident yes to our own journey. This is not a philosophy of becoming someone else. It is a roadmap back to who you truly are, grounded, purposeful, and free. The work does not end when this video does, it begins. Your call to action is this: choose one single insight from these 25, just one. Practice it with deliberate focus for the next 7 days. Perhaps it's pausing before you say yes to a request. Maybe it's having that one difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It could be as simple as writing down one thing you're grateful for each night that stems from your own agency. I want you to share your commitment in the comments below. Tell us which insight you're taking on and why. This is how we build a community not of nice guys but of strong men who support each other's growth, hold each other accountable, and remind one another that the goal was never to be liked by everyone but to live a life you can truly respect. Your journey is yours to own. Start today.